focal verse come from Esther 4:14, and it reads, "And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" Our lesson text from Esther 4:4 through 16. Truth about God. God often works out his will through adverse circumstances. Truth for my life. I will face my circumstances with courage and faith. Esther 4:4 through 16 reads, "So Esther's maid and her chamberlain came and told it her. Then was the queen exceedingly grieved, and she sent remnant to clothe Mordecai and to take away his sackcloth from him, but he received it not. Then called Esther to Hatshepsut, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he had appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai to know what it was and why it was. So Hatshepsut went forth to Mordecai unto the street of the city, which was before the king's gate. And Mordecai told him of all that had happened unto him, and of the sum of money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasury for the Jews to destroy them. Also he gave him the copy of the writing of the decree that was given to Shunshan to destroy them, to show it upon Esther, and to declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should go in unto the king to make supplication unto him, and to make request before him for her people. And Hatshepsut came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. Again Esther spake unto Hatshepsut, and gave him commandments unto Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces do know that whatsoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court, who is called, there is one law of his to put them to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out his golden scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to come in unto the king these 30 days. And they told to Mordecai Esther's word. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape into the king's house more than all the Jews. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise in the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom of such a time as this? Then Esther bade them return Mordecai his answer. Go gather together all the Jews that present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go unto the king, which is not according to the law, and if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded. May the Lord add a blessing to the reading and the hearing of his word. With our lesson, we have a lesson connection, and I will ask someone, would they go ahead and let me know what did they get out of the lesson connection according to our lesson.
Lord.
Or you can get a phone.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4.
What I got out of the lesson connection from both of the stories, they both had to leave a familiar place. With the lesson connection and professor, they both had to leave. Uh, they both of these stories, they had to leave their familiarities, their familiar place, the people that they knew, and they both had to demonstrate courage and faith, and have faith in God that God will bring them out and deliver them for what they were facing in their current circumstance. And they also all had to stand on His promises and believe in Him. So that's what I got out of the lesson connection today.
Would there be anyone else that would like to make a statement on that? Clarify. You do say you, yeah, because you know I do. You always do a good job on that. Such a good job on that. You need a microphone, huh?
So to go along with what Sister Shauna said, I do agree with what she said. I think overall, with the lesson connection and the story of Esther, it just reminds us that sometimes we're put in positions that we may not even understand why we're put in those positions. But we have to remember that God always has a plan. He has a reason. And the lesson talks about how Esther, perhaps she didn't even realize why she was in that position, but she was in that position for a reason. And so, even going back to the story of the little boy who had Down syndrome, his parents had to leave their familiar territory, to go somewhere else for safety. But even in that, God always has a purpose and He has a plan. And so when we think about our own lives, we can be assured that even if we have to leave our comfort zone, or even if the Lord is commanding us to do something, never forget that it's for a reason. And sometimes it's not for the reason we think it's for. But that's okay as long as we're obeying God and being faithful unto Him. And so the lesson connection was very good. In the end, his mother, she tells him that we're going to travel Europe to visit one of his heroes, perhaps. I probably wouldn't have said that because I'm a big word person. We have to be careful with our words. But in the end, it did work out to where he was able to meet his hero, John Cena. And it talks about how John Cena contributes so much to charity and different things of that nature. And so just a reminder to us that we should be givers, and we should contribute as well to those who are in need and help those who are in need. But also, just going back to overall the lesson, we have to remember that just because we're in a position, don't forget why we're there, right? It's for a reason, right? God has a purpose, He has a plan. And sometimes we may not understand when we first get tasked with that position or with that quest, but always know that it's for a reason, and be willing to do whatever God has commanded us to do, no matter if we face obstacles, no matter if we face even death. And, there was a lot of things going on. The reason why the things played out the way they played out. Haman had an issue with Mordecai because he did not bow to him, right? And so we're gonna face trials, we're gonna face adversity, but we have to always remember, just obey God and have faith and trust in Him. And we're gonna be uncomfortable sometimes, but that's okay. Put your faith and trust in God.
Very well said, Pastor. But just like you just said, God is always behind the scenes. He's always behind the scenes. This is what He was behind the scene by positioning Esther inside the palace. So that was a very good demonstration of the lesson. It says Esther become queen. And so with this, it's the story of Esther and Malachi. Malachi was Esther's uncle, and Esther was an orphan. She had no parents, so Malachi, I guess, took her because he was her uncle. But they both had to leave the Persian because of, and they had to defeat. They had to go to a strange place. But they were a Jew, and so they had to go among the Hebrews. This is what I understand. Am I doing it correctly? They had to go among the Hebrews, but when they did that, they had to hide the fact that they were a Jew. And so this is where we at with Esther. And Esther, she was actually, as I read the story, I took that she was a slave. And she was a slave for about 4 years, before she was even recognized. But King Ezra, he had a wife, and his wife was named Vashti. That's the way I pronounce it. And of course, the king liked to party, and I'm just paraphrasing that he likes to show off, and he wanted to show her off, but she refused to allow that. And so that would cause her to not, not to, she refused his request. In other words, so therefore that he was available for another wife, and okay, there was Esther among them, and she was a very beautiful young lady according to the way the story read. And so this is how Esther became queen because of that, Um, so that's the story of how Esther did become queen. And it says showcase a kingdom featuring multiple parties of feasting and drinking. The king demanded Vashti appear before him, and the men attending the party. Vashti refused the king's request. And it says, if the queen did not obey her king, then widespread rebellion of women against her husband will break out into the empire. So the king couldn't allow that because he didn't want it to break out against the whole empire, that a woman is not doing what the king says to do. This is what I'm saying in words. So this is how, as again I say, this is how Esther was selected to be a queen. Her relationship, her relative Mordecai forbid her to reveal her Jewish heritage, so the king had no idea that she was a Jewess. I said that before, so I'm repeating that, and to realize that. So that's how she became a queen. That's how she was selected as a queen. And it says here, do anyone have any comments on that before I go any further? First Lady. So it says here, God's still at work in different situations. It says Esther was kind, and her good demeanor caused her to gain favor. That's how she gained favor in the state. It was her demeanor, her kindness, and her good demeanor with everyone that saw her. The king saw her worth and made her his queen. So God's still at work. So that's God placed her there, but she not know that. But have God still work in her situation, although Esther, I can't pronounce the name, proved to be an extremely king, captured king. The Almighty proved faithful to Esther. In the same way, we must recognize God's ability to work in situations, no matter how strange or how arduous they are. So regardless of the situation, how strange and how we don't feel that things are working, or we should be in the situation that we're in, God is still, as we said, working behind the scenes. It's here, Esther had proven extremely powerful in his situation with Vashti. That's his wife. I can't say her name. But see, I'm sorry. And the evil Haman saw an opportunity to capitalize on a good relationship. Now, Haman is someone that was selected by the king to help the king, to rule the king. That's who Haman is. He's I would say a helper. I don't know what position he played, other than the king had selected him to help him. And so he had favor with the king. Haman had great favor with the king. And so he capitalized, as I said, on the relationship with the king, and had an opportunity to capitalize on his relationship with the king and take down an enemy. Haman did not just want to punish Mordecai, he wanted to exterminate all the Jews. So going to that, Haman wanted to destroy Mordecai because Mordecai wouldn't bow down to him, as he, wouldn't bow down to him, and so he wanted to destroy him as king. And a woman from the tribe of Benjamin would need to step in and complete a divine command where a king had failed. So it was an enmity between Mordecai and Haman. The problem between the Jews and Haman arose over Mordecai's refusal to bow down to Haman. And Haman hatred of Mordecai, and all the Jews represent one of the earliest examples of anti-Semitism in history. With this, what do you think God moved in mysterious ways? Would anybody say that? Answer that for me as we go through this lesson.
It's His plan and His will and His purpose, and so he uses strategy, and sometimes we're in places that we really don't understand, or we really don't see the outcome of things sometimes. But God has a plan for each and every one of our lives, and He's working in us. And
Also, strengthen your faith, right? It's not for us to know everything, right? If the Bible says, if you love me, keep my commandments. So it's for us to obey God and prove that we have faith in Him. And when you think about your life, when you think about various situations, I always think about everything is a test, right? It's a test of your faith. And so it's not for us to always know, what God is doing. God knows what He's doing.
Right.
It's our job to put our faith and trust in Him,
Yes.
right? Even when it gets difficult, knowing that in the end, He's going to work out every situation, and things are going to be as He has orchestrated it to be, right? And so we have to keep that in mind. So it's always a test of faith, mysterious, meaning difficult, something that we may not understand, ways we may not understand, right? But God has everything in control in all of that. So have faith in Him. So it's to help increase our faith.
God did so. God. We go on to the story. It says about Haman. Haman, as he went on to the king and he had favor with the king, says Haman lacked any real proof of wrongdoing. Fortunately for him, the king lacked wisdom. The king didn't have wisdom and failed to care for all his subjects. For the Jews and Mordecai, Esther allowed a death decree to be announced upon him. This is what Haman wanted. He made a death. The king, I would say, approved because he had lacked of wisdom. He didn't think, about what he's doing. He allowed Haman to pass, determine the date of disaster for the Jews. So he turned it over to Haman to do all these things, but the king didn't have wisdom, for that. So we're going on over here to say, Esther is revolved. Although Esther had servants to ensure her garment and impeccably clean, Mordecai dressed in sackcloth and ashes. Esther remained safe in the palace, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate and cried out bitterly. Now, anyone that was dressed in sackcloth and ashes was not to enter the kingdom, into the palace. It was not to enter the palace. But Mordecai did. He dressed and, I would say, took his clothes off, and he dressed in sackcloth and stayed outside the gate. It was other Jews that was outside that was praying and whatever outside the palace. Esther attempted to intervene for Mordecai by sending garments to clothe him. And Mordecai refused. Esther would need to do much more than to save her people. So with him changing clothes and whatever it was, his garment was not going to do it. Esther needed to do much more than that in order to save the people. And due to her position of power and relationship with the king, Esther might have thought she could escape the decree of the king because he had power and relationship. Mordecai worked convinced Esther that she might have her position for another reason, not to save herself, but to save her people. And Mordecai asked her, "Who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" You know, he questioned Esther. She understood, she realized that she may be there for another reason, not just for herself, but for her people. And Esther vowed to go into the king, even though the king had not called her, risking the same faith as Vashti. Okay, so if you go before the king without being asked, you could be placed to death. So Esther took that chance because she knew the king had not called her, but she was going to go before the king anyway. So that's where it comes from. It said not called for risking the same faith as Vashti. Esther resolutely stated, "If I perish, I perish." So in other words, she had made up her mind that she's going to go for her people, and if she perished, she perished. Face death, she just faced death. She would do that for her people. And Mordecai and determined to save her people, even though it could cost her everything. She went ahead and agreed that that's what she should do because, like I said, Mordecai Esther was placed in there for a time like this. That's why she's in the palace for a time like this to save her people. And so she did decide she's going to go to the king. And it says, doing God's will requires great courage. Sometimes we can find ourselves in a safe place of blessing thanks to God's plan. Yet the Lord calls on us to demonstrate great courage and step out of faith to reverse something terrible. The challenge may prove even more intense because we might have to stand up for someone else. And doing so would create risk for us. Nevertheless, we must move outside our comfort zone and fully embrace the will of God. So this is really saying something to us. If we face a time like this, and we know that we are standing up for God's word, and we doing God's will, that we should not let it, deter us from doing what God wants us to. And so it says here, nevertheless, we must, outside of our comfort zone, even though we're not comfort, must fully embrace the will of God. So we should embrace God's will at all times, regardless of the situation, because He will let us know that God, He's have a way out. It's His plan. I got a question. It says, how can we overcome our hesitancy to act and demonstrate great courage? Can anyone else? Bishop, I'm going to ask you that. How can we overcome our hesitancy to act and demonstrate great courage? And as you said that, Bishop, I was thinking sometimes we're not even up against life and death. We want to say what people say. We don't want to disappoint people. We are afraid of saying things that disappoint others. So we got to always remember that we have to let God use us to say what God has to say, do what God has. That's the, as you said, that's where we get the boldness from. We get it from God. To always try to please God, not others. And it says here, Esther saved her people. The situation that gave Esther her position had a reason because the king spent so much time courting. The festival mood had caused Esther to take the crown away from Vashti. Esther also hoped she could supply the king with feasting and drinking in order to help him hear her petition. So right here, when I read that, it just made me feel like the Esther was doing things, going to do this with the king, going to feast and drink in order to help her hear his petition to please him. He was going to do different than what Vashti can say, different from what the other queen did the opposite in order to please, to get the king's favor, did the opposite of what Vashti did. And it says, Esther's wisdom and Haman's folly. Esther demonstrated tremendous wisdom in preparing a couple of feasts for both her husband and Haman. Esther understood how the king worked. Haman, however, proved himself more foolish than wise, as he failed to read the king quite so well. So it's with that statement, it's letting me know that Esther knew the king better than Haman did, and so that's where Haman failed, because he didn't know the king like Esther did. So Esther her wisdom is what helped her in this situation. The beginning of Haman's downfall occurred when the king could not sleep. To alleviate his insomnia, the king asked for the royal record to be read before him. The archive contained the story of Mordecai preventing an assassination attempted on Ezra. When the king discovered that Mordecai had received no reward for his life-saving deed, he summoned Haman. It says here, the king commanded Haman to give his honor to Mordecai. After that, so with that happening, Mordecai had gone from wearing sackcloth to donning the king's robe. How have you seen God radically change a bad situation? Brother Dignity, have you ever answered that? How have you seen God radically change a bad situation? In other words, have you been in a bad situation where God changed it for the good? Okay. In your life, I'm asking about your life. How have you seen God radically change a bad situation?
Well, some things I was going through, he changed the bad situation to the good situation. He got me out of a lot of difficult times that I was just going through a rough time. And God saved me from all of that.
Okay. He did what?
He saved me from a bad situation.
Okay, I was asking for a situation, but that's okay. Okay. Oh, well, okay. The king mistook Haman's frantic plea for mercy as an attack upon the king. The outraged king ordered Haman to be hanged and Mordecai be named to his position. So with all of that, everything turned around for Mordecai and Esther. I would say this in my own words, that Haman hung himself because the king, the king mistook Haman's frantic plea for mercy as an attack upon the queen. So the king did finally see through Haman. And Haman had promised Mordecai to pay the king's treasure to destroy the Jews. Mordecai knew it was a greed on Haman's part. So the king finally realized this about Haman, and so Mordecai did take Haman's place, his position in the palace, and Esther continued to be the queen. And this was all God's plan. God knew this before it happened. When he placed, I would say that when Esther and Mordecai had to leave their home, God already knew what the plans that he had for them. So this is a lesson for us to know that God is always in the plan. We just need to recognize what he wants to do. So this lesson today, I hope someone has gotten something from this lesson today, and God bless all.
Testing 1 2.